There's a reason so many high net worth families quietly lose what they have. They focused too much on collecting the eggs, but never protected the goose. The wealth, the business, the portfolio, these are all just outcomes. The real assets is you, your strategy, and the systems you put in place. And if you're not thinking like a family CEO yet, it's time. We call these people family stewards.
You wrote a book with that premise, did you not?
I did, called Mind Your Own Business. As advisors who work closely with high net worth individuals, business owners, families, family stewards, we've seen the difference between those who manage their wealth over their lifetime as a passive reward and those who protect it like an enterprise. The latter are the ones who create lasting impact.
This video is for educational purposes only. Always consult qualified professionals before making any legal, tax, or investment decisions.
So too many high net worth families, Sam, seem to put too much emphasis on money and not enough emphasis on planning and some of the other outcomes. And I think that's an important distinguishing factor for them.
They share their wealth, they don't share their values.
Sometimes they'll adjust when the markets shift or they'll rebalance, but that's not a strategy, that's just maintenance. So without a clear vision, a decisive framework, a leadership mindset, even large fortunes can be quietly whittled away at. And I think it's something that you want to be thinking about.
Yeah, it's interesting how so many families are so tight-lipped about what they have. And like in most things, communication's the breakdown. Mm-hmm. They don't share, the information. They don't share what they want to have happen, and there's usually bad outcomes.
I think one of the common, probably the greatest misconception after being in this business for so many decades is the people that you think have a lot of wealth most times don't, and the people that have a lot of wealth you would never imagine had that wealth. There's a quiet confidence, there's a certain frugality to them, and they're able to live the greatest of lifestyle, even though their needs aren't that great. They're not flying private jets and they don't own 50-foot boats.
Often referred to as the millionaire next door.
Yeah, which was a terrific book that we'd recommend you read. Sheds a lot of light on wealth and what it's really like. So there was a Motley Fool study back in 2021, and about 2/3 of the people worried about leaving too large an inheritance. And I thought that was interesting.
Well, they see how their kids handle their own money. And then they wonder, well, if they have this huge influx of money, is it going to be squandered? Which is not what they worked hard for so many years.
It's funny, I played golf the other day with an estate planning attorney, and he had the most interesting view of inheritance. And he said, an inheritance, when you inherit it, it's just waiting to be spent. It might be in a new home, it might be on a new car, it could be a boat, it could be anything. But people inherit money, and there's something about having to work for it. Passing on those values to the next generation is really, really important.
Well, we often find that parents are very frugal. They never fly first class. And I remember you saying to somebody, yeah, your kids and your grandkids are going to fly first class because you didn't fly first class. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, there was the fellow that founded the company we used to work with many years ago. We were in a meeting, and this guy shows me a picture of him, the CEO of this billion-dollar company, and he's putting his luggage in coach up on the rack. And I thought, my gosh, that guy could buy the airplane and he still flies coach. So getting back to the Motley Fool study from 2021, over 55% of the people were concerned that providing too large an inheritance to their kids might make them lazy. And I think we've all seen it. I think it's something that you need to be putting in the background. Now, you mentioned it earlier. Communication is probably one of the greatest things that you can pass on to your kids. And I was talking to a doctor years ago, and I said, I just hope my kids are active and work hard and whatnot. And he said, they're always watching what you do, which I thought was very interesting. So I go to the gym a lot before work, and I see my son doing the same thing. And I think it's interesting, if hopefully by osmosis or something else, being raised in the same household, some of those disciplines, as you would call them, would be passed on.
My only argument to that would be the people that made the money worked really hard to make it, yet so much is squandered in the next two generations that even though they may have been watching, money does weird things to you, and that doesn't always hold true in that context.
So there was a UPS report that about over 2/3 of wealthy investors are concerned about their heirs using the money unwisely. Over half of the billionaires say instilling values is their biggest challenge. I mean, it's hard when you're used to, you don't get a new car when you're 16, you get a new Porsche or Mercedes. It's kind of hard to function in that area and be what most of us would consider normal.
Great story. Family, very wealthy family, always flew private. And this one time, first time in this little 10-year-old boy's life, they had to fly commercial. And they're sitting on the plane as other people are piling in, and the kid goes to his mom, "Why are people getting on our plane?" Like, everybody flies private, right? And it's really tough to turn that around when that's all they know.
So this is the golden goose mindset. And it's more important to keep the goose going because she's laying the golden eggs. And hopefully that builds both financial and emotional stability. So let's talk about how a CEO thinks. And what we're trying to get at here, we're trying to drive home is somebody needs to act as the family CEO. We could have co-CEOs, but we at least need one CEO. And when you think about that, you think about what a CEO does. He or she wears a lot of hats. They have a lot of tasks. They've got to make a lot of decisions, but also they hire a team, whether it's the board or the C-suite people, and that's right, they delegate tasks. So while they're one or both of the couple are the big earners, we need to have somebody operating the business at home, and we've got to run this business at home like a business.
Well, and as you get older, it's difficult to continue to run by yourself. So you need to delegate, and the sooner you trust your kids to be, or whoever it is, to be able to fill that role, the better the whole machine's going to work, and for the longer period of time.
And this isn't just spreadsheets and one-off meetings. This is rolling up your sleeves, getting your hands dirty, and really trying to add value so not only you understand, but your whole team understands. And you should have a team, and pretty much everybody needs a financial advisor, preferably a wealth manager. They need an accountant to help with the taxes and tax planning, and they need an attorney to handle some of the legal affairs. So again, best practice, treat your wealth like a business, run it like a business, build your team like we talked about with all your other professionals. I think the next thing, we go from short-term wins to long-term wins. And when we do that, the only way to really do that is to have a plan. Doesn't mean the plan can't be changed. And if we create a plan today, we can look at it. If we looked at it 10 years from now, we'd laugh about how bad it was.
Well, as the world changes, as tax laws change, as estate laws change, you have to be able to adapt to those changes. If you're static, it's not going to work. So you have to have a system in place to adapt to the ever-changing world that we live in.
And we look at that as an investment in the infrastructure of your planning. And there's an investment. There's no doubt. There are costs to doing this right.
For sure.
There are costs to doing it. There's costs to being in good shape, right? You got to wake up early. You've got to lug yourself to the gym. You've got to pay for the gym membership. You got to buy the fancy drink for when you're done.
One would argue far lower cost than by not changing with the times and not doing the right things and keeping up.
We want you to invest in the infrastructure of your plan. And one of the mistakes that we see is you change as the wind blows and you lose focus on the long-term plan. So the best practice, create a team, find the team that you want to build, create a plan, stay on the plan, have regular family meetings.
And communicate at all levels.
Well, and that goes to our third point, and that is transparency. We've encountered really two opposite ends of the spectrum when we look at planning. We'll take our dad, for example. And our dad was completely transparent. He wanted everybody, because our mom wasn't terribly involved in the finances and never became even after he was gone. He wanted us to know where everything was. So when that day came, whether he became infirmed or passed along, that we had things in order. And so if we take that and we knew where everything was in the filing cabinet, we knew where the combination to the safe, we knew everything. To the opposite end of the spectrum, and that person doesn't want to share anything with their kids. And that, that can be a little bit of a disaster. So we think that transparency and communicating with whoever it may be, your team, is terribly, terribly important.
Yeah, and Dad gave us our marching orders. We knew first and foremost, we take care of Mom, all the way down to the grandkids. He left grandkids part of his IRAs. And he said, look, I want that money to end up in Roth IRAs. And you can't transfer it directly to a Roth IRA, but systematically you can get that money over there. And, going on 6 years later, we've made that happen. So
it was a tremendous tax and estate planning.
Would we have known to do that without his direction? Hopefully, but who knows? But it was a priority, and we knew that.
Well, we couldn't have made that decision without him. So I'll tell you a quick story. This happened about a year ago. One of our clients' fathers passed away, and they called us and said, hey, can you give us a hand? And when we went through all of the assets, there were really no assets in his name. Everything was what were called transfer on death accounts. And he thought he was doing his kids a favor. And there's a lot of parlance that says, oh, you don't want to go through probate. In our state of Pennsylvania, probate's not such a big deal. And the extra work and time and money, it didn't save them any money. They didn't save any money on taxes. And all it did was create a huge nightmare for them, where they had to go and marshal all these assets individually, the individual kids, versus them just having everything go through one estate. So it can be done wrong. Now, it didn't cost them millions and millions of dollars, but it was a huge headache that the kids didn't want to have to endure, and could have been solved with a little bit of planning. I think on a positive note, you look at a client passed away recently, and everything was in order. And we talked about it on another podcast. Everything was transferred by operation of law. There were no issues. We were able to bring the son in, and we weren't picking up the pieces of a broken vase.
Yeah,
we were just continuing on with the plan.
It's fun to watch a plan that you helped clients orchestrate or set up, create, and then watch it fulfilled. Where it goes, not everything's going to go 100% the way you'd love to have it go, but 98% is not a bad outcome. And it's really fun to watch that, and all the hard work on the front end, it reaps benefits on the back end.
And in today's privacy environment, handling estates is much more difficult, say, than back when I was practicing law in the early 90s. It's just a lot more work. So think about, what do you do next? I think you have to ask yourself, if you stepped away yesterday, who knows what to do? Is there a plan in place? Does anybody know the combination to the safe? Does anybody know the password to your email so they can log on and get your email, your electronic documents?
Have you had a family meeting to make all this happen?
Yeah, so building wealth structure that endures, and again, we're not talking about inevitabilities. All of us are going to die. So we're just planning for what's going to happen, not what might happen. We're not putting hurricane windows on in case there's a hurricane. There will be a hurricane. So set a plan, create a wealth structure, build the team, clarify what it is you want to do.
Each person should know their role.
Everybody should have their role. And then elevate yourself from an asset holder or an investor to a planner. So wealth isn't your legacy. It's what you do with it. And the best personal CEOs, they don't just grow wealth. They manage it and make it productive for years and years into the future.
A CEO's job is to avoid catastrophic failure. For families, that means preventing your life's work from vanishing in the next generation. Click here to watch our next video on why 70% of wealthy families lose their wealth and how you can avoid that fate.